If you've ever had your car not start in cold weather, you know how much that sucks. I mean, I think The Simpsons does have a valid point. Now, if there's one thing we can all agree upon, even the Americans are going to agree here. There's something Canada has that you guys, you have maybe a bit of it, but we definitely level up. If you haven't already guessed, it's cold freaking weather. How cold is it here? Way too cold. Cold weather testing facilities like to set up shop in Manitoba. In northern Manitoba, take a look at some of these stats here. How many days of snow? An average of 240 days a year of sub-zero temperatures up in Thompson. I work there half the time. So although I'm not a mechanic, take the advice I'm about to give you with a grain of salt, do your own research, all that kind of stuff. But I'm gonna show you what works for me in getting my car to start all the time, every time. And if you're concerned about wear on the vehicle, my last car was a 96 Honda Civic that I bought with about 72,000 kilometers, and I drove it up to 496,000. And I sold it in working condition. Piper says hi. All right, step number one, if you haven't already figured it out, is to stick a block. Now, the first place to start, if you don't have a block heater on your car or a cord dangling at the front that you can plug in when it gets to about minus 20 degrees Celsius or minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit, you can buy these things on Amazon, but just about any garage will be able to install a block heater for you. There's mechanics out there, you can do it yourself. This isn't something I would tackle. Optionally, they do also make oil pan heaters, magnets that you can stick on. These things are kind of a pain though, because it means in the cold weather, you're gonna have to get out underneath your car and stick this thing onto the oil pan. And then you also have to take them back off when you're not using it. I find the block heater is a better solution. Now, if you're consistently in the minus 20s or colder, I also recommend going to synthetic oil, a full synthetic and a good quality synthetic. Take a look at the difference between flow at minus 35 degrees Celsius between a synthetic and a conventional oil. It is huge. I did try this test for myself at one point in time just to see the flow comparison, and it's definitely noticeable, but it only is really noticeable at much colder temperatures. We're talking about minus 30 or colder in Celsius. Last but not least, here's something that I did with my car, and this is for temperatures below probably about minus 35 Celsius up to about minus 40 degrees Celsius or minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And yes, that happens more than I'd like it to. Now, there's nothing good about starting your vehicle when the car block is a decent temperature and you have good oil in the engine, but your battery won't cut the mustard. So I've heard that the truck drivers around here have done this since forever, so I've decided to adopt this for my car. Now, up until now, what I've been doing is taking a trickle charger and just manually hooking it up underneath the hood, but I decided something that I can leave on more often and will go on automatically when I plug in the block heater. So for me, that's a battery tender 750 milliamp charger and maintainer. And the reason I chose this device is I don't have to look after it. I can leave it plugged in all the time. It'll charge if the battery needs charging, and it'll not charge if the battery doesn't need charging. And even a little bit of charge can provide some heat for a battery and can keep it from freezing up. Now, this is what happened to the wife's car about 4 or 5 days ago. Her battery froze rock solid, and even though the battery is in decent shape, it's not going to do anything to start the vehicle. You'll need an extension cord with a multi-plug end and a battery tender charger for this. Now, I'm not a mechanic like I mentioned earlier, but this is something I'm very comfortable doing myself. It's pretty easy. I simply just took the block heater end and took the cord end off and pulled the cord back through so it was underneath the hood. And I found a place that I could tuck this stuff in that I didn't have to worry about it getting it wound into any mechanical stuff. Also a place where I could secure it up. So after pulling out the wires and getting them all on the vehicle side or underneath the hood side, take the new cord and I'll kind of run it the same place that the old block heater cord was running, and I'll fasten it to a spot kind of underneath the hood. Now, it's a bit of a tight squeeze to get in here, but I did manage to get everything in place where I wanted it. As you can see, my mechanic skills are showing. I had to donate some blood in the process to the car gods. My triple end is on the engine side. Definitely not a safe place right now where I could start the vehicle, run the vehicle, but I will fasten that cord up with a bunch of zip ties, and at this point I just have to hook up the battery maintainer. I'm going to run the cord behind and underneath everywhere where I can, and then I'm going to secure it up with some zip ties to keep it from dangling into anything inside of the engine compartment, bringing it up to the battery side. Cord end that I took off, I'll refasten that back up and I'll pop that thing in. Now that I've got that there, you can see I've zip tied all the wires, especially because it's right close to a belt, as you can see there, that I don't want it getting caught in. Now I'll disconnect the battery terminals starting with a negative, and I'll go on to the positive. At this point in time, I can take the wires from that battery tender and hook it up. As you can see, it's got a fuse in line as well, which is pretty awesome. And I'll resecure the positive terminal with the new connections in place. Now I'll do the same for the negative. Once I got the negative all secured up, I can go ahead and test this thing to make sure that it's drawing power and everything is running. So I'll check the light. This battery tender has a light on it. I don't know if you can see it here, but it is flashing green, which is good. I also have a power pulse, which I'm checking on this battery as well. This is supposed to take and keep the battery from running through any desulfation, something like that, keeping the plates optimal. Still not sure about that device. Checking it out, we'll see how it goes. Actually, I'm really curious if somebody's used one of them for a long period of time. Leave that in the comments down below. I'd love to know. Right now, this is still a trial, so I'm not going to say anything positively or negatively about it because I'm not 100% sure if it's providing me any results as of yet. All right, and the final check that I'm going to do to make sure that the wiring is correct on the plug is make sure that it's drawing power, and I have a Sense Energy monitor installed in my house as well, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull out the app after I plug this thing in, and I can verify that the block heater is using 433 watts. Or 437. That'll be between the charger and the block. So that's perfect. Everything is wired up and it's all set. Oh, by the way, for those of you thinking, well, what about Alaska? Well, Alaska's got a population, according to Google, 731,000 people live in there. Well, there's 1.369 million in Manitoba. So a couple more people dealing with a couple of more miserable temperatures. Not a measuring contest, but for those of you that were thinking it. If you're curious and like to learn more about the home energy monitor, put a video link in the side here and you can take a look, and I'll let you know my experiences with that.